To fight monsters, man created their own monsters. That's the mantra of Pacific Rim, a doctrine implemented through humanity's ingenuity, given form via the monstrous mechanical hunters which ultimately canceled the Kaiju apocalypse. But what if mankind already lived in a world of monsters? Would these natural titans be able to stop the precursor invasion? What would happen if the Pacific Rim breach opened within the MonsterVerse? To set the stage of this scenario, I want to establish a few key ground rules first for this what if to follow. The first is that I'll be following the chronological timeline of the Kaiju War in Pacific Rim, which means the breach will open in the year 2013. Though to be clear, this invasion is not purposeful, but an accident. Perhaps a precursor had a great night partying with the hive mind, showed up to work drunk the next day, and plugged in the wrong interdimensional coordinates. Instead of invading the normal Pacific Rim world, a tear is opened within the MonsterVerse. Why I'm being specific here is that the precursors are entering the MonsterVerse without any prior knowledge of the Titans. An important factor which will separate this scenario from the crossover I hope to do in the future, which is a, full crossover with Pacific Rim and the MonsterVerse, Jaegers included. Anyway, enough ground rules, let's kick off the invasion. A tear in space and time, a connection between the MonsterVerse and the Antiverse, is birthed off the coast of the Philippines. Through the dimensional gate, the first Kaiju, Trespasser, arrives in San Francisco on August 10th, 2013, laying waste to any and all in his path. Humanity's defenses wouldn't be all that different from their Pacific Rim brethren. Monarch's technological advancements in studying Titans doesn't give them any edge combating Trespasser, just as it didn't serve humanity well militarily in 2014 with Godzilla or the Mutos. Speaking of the Alpha though, it'd probably be hours or days after the Kaiju attack before the King of the Monsters would likely sense this new creature to the world and intervene. Mind you, just because Trespasser caused an immense amount of destruction doesn't mean he's immediately going to be an enemy of Godzilla. We've seen Destroyer-class Titans get away with a lot over the years, so if Trespasser bowed, I can see Godzilla finding a way to coexist with the Kaiju. However, the hive mind puppeting the Kaiju's actions would never allow such a thing to occur. The precursors want global domination after all, so submitting to some interdimensional creature is completely out of the question for, the Kaiju, leading to what I would consider definitely one of the most one-sided beatdowns I've ever covered on the channel. For reference, Trespasser weighs roughly 2,780 tons, over 30 times lighter than Godzilla 2014's 90,000 tons. To put this in perspective for you, you can imagine Godzilla essentially is beating around like an insect, while for Trespasser, he may as well be fighting a living mountain. After all the death and destruction, Godzilla's total victory is celebrated by those nearby, and cursed by beings watching from the other side of the rift. But I'll touch on the precursors in a moment. What are the ramifications of Godzilla's victory for Earth? Well, this early G-Day essentially means that Monarch is forced into the light sooner. It also means the masses learn that the world is filled with titans of the Protector and Destroyer variety, but most pressing of all is the public relations nightmare stemming from one ex-nuclear scientist, aka Joe Brody. Yes, Godzilla stopped Trespasser, but his involvement had nothing to do with Monarch. In fact, if Godzilla appeared out of the blue, he would be the second entity Monarch, an agency meant to specifically study and monitor these creatures, failed to detect. Now imagine how the greater public at large would feel when a disgraced yet charismatic figure appears on national airways. A man who attempted to learn what Monarch was hiding for years, of the danger which killed his wife, merely for that monstrous threat to take thousands upon thousands of lives in San Francisco. Monarch likely survives the following months, forced to come clean in every discernible way to the government, specifically of the United States. However, the public blowback would be far, far too great for Ishiro Serizawa to survive, no matter how noble his intentions may have been. Who replaces Serizawa or how Monarch changes, I ultimately can't say. What I can say is no matter what happens, 6 months after Trespasser makes landfall off San Francisco, a new Kaiju surfaces near Manila. On February 5th, 2014, the kaiju codenamed Hundun arrives in the Philippines during a massive tropical storm. While possessing the potential to flatten Manila, it most likely wouldn't be able to make it far when Godzilla once again intervenes. Quick side note, there's actually a pretty good likelihood that the Ion Dragon does intervene in this fight. The creature does call the Philippines home after all, and based on the creature's violent reaction to Godzilla entering his territory, one can imagine an unknown entity drawing the dragon's wrath if he were to get his aquatic claws on it. I stress could because if the Ion Dragon is within the Axis Mundi system, he could be away when the kaiju makes landfall. Regardless of which arrives, another one-sided battle follows, ending in Hundun's destruction. Yet only 3 months later, the world is rocked by another attack when the male Muto hatches in May 1999. The male reunites with the female, leading to a fierce battle with Godzilla. Now, some events would definitely change for this encounter. For instance, the whole nuclear plan to lure the Mutos out to sea and to detonate a high-yield nuclear weapon, killing the male, female, and Godzilla, likely wouldn't occur. While the military may be all for the plan, politically, killing Godzilla would be a bit more difficult to justify, especially after the King of the Monsters not only saved San Francisco, but potentially Manila. How the individual hour-by-hour moments play out really doesn't matter. What does is the end result, which largely remains the same. Godzilla beats the parasites, saving San Francisco from a second monster attack. But back to the aftermath. While you may think the Muto uprising wouldn't mean much for the ongoing kaiju war, on the contrary, the death of the parasites actually allows humanity to understand that the kaiju are not natural to this world. Once Monarch scientists compared tissue samples from the Mutos, Godzilla, and potentially the Ion Dragon against the corpses of Trespasser and Hundun in San Francisco and Manila respectively, the difference would be unmistakable. Earth's natural titans possess familiar carbon-based biology, while the invaders' silicon structures and blue blood mark them as something entirely foreign. More military and scientific resources moved to the Pacific. Monarch's research division focuses entirely on these mysterious blue-blooded beasts, striking gold in May of 2014 when Kaisif makes landfall in Cabo San Lucas, Mexico. Before you ask, this is about 2,000 miles away from Rodan, so sadly the Molten Demon is not going to show up and start ripping and tearing through this kaiju. However, I can say that, just like the past two incidents, Godzilla would not take kindly to such an attack and would most likely intervene. Thus, Monarch gets a new specimen to study, but also more importantly, a way to triangulate the breach. Now, tracing the kaiju's movements from where they came from wouldn't be perfect, but with enough military vessels exploring the area of overlap, a concerted effort is made to locate where these creatures are coming from, allowing humanity to discover a dimensional tear in the ocean floor, pulsing with otherworldly energy. The breach. Earth's understanding of the incursion wouldn't be immediate, but I think most in Monarch would get an idea of what is going on when Scizor emerges on September 2nd, 2014. Honestly, detected so early, I'm a little bit unsure if Scizor would even make it all the way to South Korea. What I can say is if he is delayed by said military measures, then it's likely that Godzilla takes him out before he can make landfall in South Korea, just like he did in the original timeline. And with his defeat, it essentially sums up the difference between the original Pacific Rim timeline and this new timeline. Whereas humanity was forced to create their own monsters to defeat the kaiju which breached their dimension, this Earth already has a protector, many in fact, each more than capable of besting these blue-blooded beasts. Yet none better able than the king of the monsters himself, Godzilla. Now you may think that Godzilla is more than capable of stopping this incursion single-handedly. I mean, is he not strong enough to essentially kill every kaiju and every pawn the precursors send through the breach? And to that I have to say, yes, he more than is. He can do it endlessly, in fact. However, the war is not that simple. Due to the biometric lock upon the breach, Godzilla is unable to enter through the portal and destroy the Precursor's foundry on the other side, leaving the Precursors fully capable of continuing their invasion efforts, of molding and evolving their kaiju to better combat the threats they've found. Because even if the Precursors have lost every battle so far, decisively I should also note, I should also stress, the precursors would not and do not end the war they initiated. They would still pursue the conquest of Earth. For the next several years, the precursors send wave after wave of kaiju through the dimensional tear. Desolation of population centers is no longer the sole objective, for the kaiju are now probing, attacking cities, new lands, and drawing forth the Earth's immune response to their infection, aka the Titans. By doing this, the precursors would gradually understand that Godzilla is not the sole threat to their invasion efforts. There are other Titans that will throw a bit of a wrench into their plans. Like when they attack Japan and Chile respectively, they most likely would draw out Titanus Yamato no Orochi and Titanus Quetzalcoatl. These lower level Titans would still most likely eliminate the kaiju with ease. Kong even gets to throw back the invaders too if they do stumble upon Skull Island. And the likelihood I'd wager is rather high, all things considered. Anyway, what would be most horrifying to the hive mind would be the kaiju blue being nullified by the Titan's radiation. All the damage to the environment, to terraform the Earth to their liking, essentially undone by the lingering radiation the Titans give off, leading to one definitive conclusion. Humanity is not the primary threat to the precursors' war aims. If they are to conquer Earth, the Titans must first perish. And to do so, their own kaiju must change, evolve to meet the Titans' level of strength on an equal playing field. So how to achieve this? Well, the precursors keep sending their own kaiju, but I'd imagine small, specialized DNA harvesters are sent too, either through the breach or within the kaiju like Otachi's child. These would be scavengers, meant to acquire the DNA of the Titans for the hive mind to experiment with. This isn't the craziest thing when you consider that the precursors seemingly take sea life's DNA and incorporate it into their own kaiju, like the crab kaiju which Pentecost put down, or some of the kaiju like Knifehead sharing traits with sharks. But let's shift our focus briefly to consider how humanity views this ongoing crisis. While the Pacific Rim timelines saw a largely reactive United Nations scrambling to develop the Jaeger program at the cost of really any study of the breach itself, our alternate timeline presents the opposite. Humanity in the years following Trespassers' attack still don't have a surefire way to kill a kaiju. In its place, what you have is a formidable global scientific agency. With hundreds, perhaps thousands of scientists working around the clock, not to mention an endless amount of funding by the Earth's nations, especially those which surround the Pacific, within months, Monarch cracks the code that Newton Geisler needed years to discover in the original timeline. That being, only kaiju can pass through the breach. Well, that these kaiju are being genetically modified. Genetic modification, after all, does mean that there is an alien entity creating these monsters. You know, monsters that are destructive, violent, and pollution spilling. So whatever's on the other side definitely is not friendly. It's also likely Monarch would conduct tests to see about delivering a weapon through the breach. Yet the moment the precursors detect what Monarch is doing, they'd likely seal the door shut to ensure that Monarch can't, deploy a nuke on their side. Gypsy's delivery was a success because the precursors were either too arrogant or unaware of the danger. Here though, the precursors likely detect Monarch's repeated experiments. So by the time humanity finally feels comfortable to shove a nuke through the door, getting past all the bureaucracy, the window of opportunity would have been thoroughly closed. So can't humanity just, nuke the breach anytime a kaiju arises? Honestly, yes, but while that may work in the short term, it's a relatively poor long-term solution. I mean, consider this. Repeated nuclear detonations would likely lure Titans to the area. I mean, they do consume radiation after all. And what would happen if Godzilla, another Titan, or perhaps even just a little bit of flesh were to make its way to the enemy? Right now, it's in the best interest of Monarch and the governments to allow the Titans to continue killing the incoming kaiju. In fact, there may be an effort to move Titans from one part of the Earth to the other, though I can't imagine that going all that well. Though someone having far more success would be Apex, a company likely given a blank check in this timeline and a company that is going full steam ahead on creating the long-term solution for humanity, aka creating a kaiju killing weapon of their own. And need such a weapon humanity does after non-kaiju related attacks starting in 2014. Godzilla Aftershock likely isn't altered in any meaningful way, with the Muto-Prime's defeat repeating what occurred in the comic. The events of Monarch Legacy of Monsters, by contrast, probably just occurs a year earlier, though the full evaluation of how this affects the greater MonsterVerse I'll likely give my thoughts on in a short after Season 2's conclusion. That leaves Ghidorah's awakening in Godzilla King of the Monsters, a resurrection that could take place anywhere from 2018 through 2020. The accelerated or slowed timeline here would essentially just come down to when the Orca is created and how Emma Russell handles the greater loss to her family. Because Trespasser would strike San Francisco with less warning than Godzilla or the Mutos. This no doubt would skyrocket the human lives taken that day, likely resulting in the unfortunate loss of the Russell family's youngest members. This loss could spur Emma on, or it could spur her progress. Either way, she'd likely become further radicalized by the event, viewing all Titans as protectors of Earth needing to be freed, to be set loose upon the world from not only the destructive and poisonous influence of humanity, but also the wrath of the Kaiju. With Alan Jonah providing resources and manpower, Emma succeeds in awakening the titular three-headed dragon from its icy tomb. Yet Ghidorah's bid for Alpha of Earth proves short-lived. By this point in the scenario, Godzilla has dispatched countless Kaiju invaders, perhaps dozens. The military, recognizing his role on the planet, if not the very least his utility, withholds the Oxygen Destroyer weapon that proved so catastrophic in the original timeline. Likely they've already tested against the Kaiju, and it's a weapon that just doesn't do anything to these interdimensional invaders. So without the military's involvement, Godzilla tears King Ghidorah apart, cementing once more his reign as the undisputed King of the Monsters. Despite Ghidorah's defeat though, Emma Russell and Alan Jonah would press forward with their attempts to achieve their new world order. Their network of eco-terrorists likely continued to try and awaken Titans across the planet and to coax them against humanity and the Kaiju. However, with the ongoing conflict, Godzilla likely wants the Titans outside of the Pacific to remain where they are, meaning Godzilla would likely just show up and clean up the mess that they create. But despite all these new awakenings, there's actually one that is well known that does not occur, that being Camazotz in 2021. There is no storm from Ghidorah for the devil beneath Skull Island to manipulate. No alpha call from Ghidorah to stir the bat from slumber. Without such issues, no cataclysm befalls Skull Island. No mass loss of life afflicts the Iwi. No halt is given to the Apex and Monarch teams on the island, allowing them to investigate the Hollow Earth portal upon the Isle. And with easy access to said subterranean world, Apex likely is able to explore and harness Hollow Earth energy for their ultimate weapon. So what's the result, you might ask? Well, by 2024, a fully operational Mechagodzilla stands ready to attack anything through the breach, or perhaps put a rogue Titan down if need be, though this machine does bear some differences from the original counterpart that you are all familiar with. With earlier funding and virtually unlimited resources, Apex would likely construct their mechanical Alpha Titan with another biological foundation. Instead of King Ghidorah's remains, they would likely utilize Dagons. But to avoid this scenario becoming what if Kiryu was in the MonsterVerse, we'll also assume the leap in technological progress from them fighting the Kaiju also leads to a leap in computing capabilities as well. The end result? Well, Ren Serizawa may have to pilot Mechagodzilla from the inside, but what you have is a potent Kaiju or Titan killing weapon, a weapon humanity will definitely need when 2024 comes to a close. Because in January 2025, the breach splits open like a wound, bleeding Kaiju without end. A single Kaiju appears on January 1st. 7 days later on the 8th, a double incursion follows. Then on the 12th, just 4 days later, 3 Kaiju emerge from the breach. These far larger than anything before. That is where the original Pacific Rim ended. And you're probably kind of wondering what the point of this scenario is at this point, because there really hasn't been a change from the first Kaiju to the Category 5. Slattern is still big, but a lightweight compared to Godzilla and Mechagodzilla. So why even cover this hypothetical scenario at all? Why not scale them from the outset? Well, on January 15th, the world will realize exactly why. A little something the precursors were betting on from the start. That is exponential growth. Apologies for the interruption, but by far most of you are not subscribed. To stay up to date with these future releases, please consider doing so, or at the very least, leaving a like. Thank you. On the 12th of January, roughly 13,000 tons of killer kaiju escaped the breach, double the mass from the 8th and in half the time. So in exactly 3 days, on January 15th, I want you, yes, you viewer, to guess down in the comments down below to estimate how much mass the precursors can push through the breach. 50,000 tons? 100,000 tons? 150,000 tons? Leave your comment down below and come back to this point. Okay? You're good? Okay, sweet. The answer is infinite. The time between breaches in just 3 days essentially allows the precursors to ferry all the kaiju they could ever want through the breach without any limitation in time or mass. Kaiju far denser, far more powerful than the ones that came before, thanks to the scavenged Titan DNA. Imagine leatherbacks enhanced with Kong strength, Slatterns infused with Ghidorah's regeneration, Itachi's able to fly faster and farther thanks to Titanus Quetzalcoatl. Now there are limitations as these Titan Kaiju hybrids likely are few in number, accounting for the immense amount of resources needed to create them compared to their regular blue-blooded brethren. Regardless, hundreds if not thousands of the precursor's pawns invade the Earth with one sole objective: conquest. Mechagodzilla, if it's in the area, likely is forced to retreat by the sheer volume it faces, while Godzilla, not one to back down, vanishes to the masses in a sea of blue blood, taking dozens upon dozens of the invaders with him. With the two strongest titans on the planet either in retreat or dead, kaiju surge in every direction. Humanity responds, nukes begin to drop. Yet the horde is far too great in number and too spread out for such a demonstration of nuclear might to prove effective. The tsunami of kaiju would crash upon nation shores with terrifying speed. Consider how Leatherback and Itachi reached Hong Kong within hours of emerging from the breach. Even if only some of the kaiju can replicate such a feat, coastal populations across the Pacific Rim, from Tokyo to Taipei, Hong Kong to Hanoi, Singapore to Skull Island, coastal or cities close to the open ocean would all face invaders before evacuation protocols could even be fully implemented. The only real exception would be Skull Island, considering its low population and high amount of military assets. Likely, Kong and the Iwi can be evacuated in time before the island is overrun by kaiju. With Godzilla seemingly gone, Mechagodzilla outnumbered, and humanity just outgunned in every single way, the MonsterVerse in the span of 24 hours would go from decisively winning the Titan Kaiju war to the brink of extinction. But at the edge of mankind's hope, at the end of their time, a mother who experienced unimaginable loss watches the horror on display and decides not to allow humanity to perish, to not die alone. Emma Russell contacts her husband, attracting Monarch's attention. She will help the Earth face the monsters at their door. She knows how to cancel the apocalypse. A plan comes together with the one tool that can organize the Earth's Titans into a semi-cohesive unit, aka the Orca. But the question would be where to make such a last stand. Well, luckily, that is actually pretty easy. The answer is Skull Island. Now you may have noticed I just said the island was overrun not 200 words prior. And while true, the island holds one final surprise the precursors would not have discovered. That being Hollow Earth, or specifically the Axis Mundi network across the planet. With their own kaiju too frail to use the portals, not to mention the system not existing on the Precursor's original Earth if they are indeed future humans, the invaders would not see this attack coming. Kong, Rodan, really any Titan with a personal grudge against the Precursors likely joined the fray under Kong's leadership. And when unified, this party of Titans would likely force the Precursors to turn their unending hordes towards Skull Island. But this desperate last stand is merely a deception. By focusing the Precursors' attention on Skull Island, humanity is actually creating the perfect diversion for Mechagodzilla to emerge unseen from a Hollow Earth portal nearby to Guam, ready to strike the invaders where they least expect it. Mechagodzilla then repeats Pentecost's plan, grabbing a lightweight Category 1 through 3 kaiju, killing it, and plunging into the breach with a nuclear payload. Ren Serizawa would not die a madman wishing to rule the world, but a hero sacrificing his own life to save a father he's recently reconnected with after his departure with Monarch, and all those that can't protect themselves against the kaiju threat. At least that is one possibility. A plan which would have succeeded against the original Precursors, but an outcome I personally think is unlikely for this smarter version of the invaders. Upon Mechagodzilla's arrival, the Precursors could realize what is going on and just force their kaiju to scatter. They don't need to kill Mechagodzilla at the end of the day. As long as he can't get through the breach, there is no threat to them. Patience can essentially be their ultimate trump card, and that's not a luxury humanity has. Because the longer the Precursors bide their time, the more chance that their horde is successful at crushing all the Titans on Skull Island. And it's at this moment, when the Precursors are on the cusp of grasping victory in the Titan Kaiju War, that their kaiju, their puppets, do the unthinkable. They sever their invisible strings. The Precursors know the cause. They can see the thing which allowed their kaiju to rebel, swimming toward the breach, bathed in a pink light. Godzilla is back, evolved and sporting a new trick for the invaders thanks to Tiamat's DNA and all the blue blood which coated him after they thought him dead. To fully explain, thanks to Kaiju DNA, Godzilla likely would gain some level of connection to the hive mind. Would he be able to control the invading kaiju? Unlikely. But with those infused with Titan DNA, the chance exists for his dominion over them via the Alpha Call to awaken some level of autonomy, of freedom. Essentially, Godzilla would be a shortwave transmitter, creating chaos in the hive mind and allowing the titular Alpha and perhaps a few turncoats within the kaiju ranks to near the breach. Thanks to his altered DNA, the breach probably detects Godzilla as friendly, allowing him and his turncoats to go through the portal and start causing chaos on the other end. I should also note that by this time, being able to ferry all of their monsters through the portal, there likely isn't any back at the main base or the foundry on the opposite end of the Precursor's antiverse world. So Godzilla and his turncoats are likely running into very little competition. Competition, I should also stress, that if they are not up to the Titan hybrid, standard, if they are just normal kaiju, they're probably getting bowled over rather quickly. Unparalleled destruction occurs in the antiverse, the breach between worlds forced to close. Those upon Skull Island given a respite, especially as Mechagodzilla makes landfall to assist in cleaning up the kaiju stragglers. Some kaiju still remain, and while the planet and Titans will have to deal with them in time, for now, the Earth can rest easy. The war is finally over. For the Precursors, their war of survival has now begun. And that concludes this scenario, though I would be amiss if I didn't give a shout out to the awesome Evolved Titan members that make videos like these possible for you to enjoy. That includes the likes of Bernard Rubin, Forgay Steve, Claire, the Sad Beast King, Anime Mothman, the Cosmonaut, and the Australian Nerd, not to mention Road Does Stuff. I would also shout out Author Eternity too, but we all know he doesn't deserve it. You know why. Anyway, if you want a chance for your own scenario to be covered on the channel, want to watch stuff early, or just help out, think about becoming a member today. You'll get perks like voting on every scenario/video that is posted on this channel, just like the next one, which is what if Gamera, the Showa version, appeared in Godzilla's Showa era. As always, I'm GrayShot151, and I'll catch you all next time. Until then, later.